Hello and welcome to the podcast Life as a show intently focused on exploring and unearthing the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. On today's show, we're going to explore life as a professional recruiter through a conversation with a fascinating guest who has managed to excel in an extremely competitive industry. Plus, you'll want to hear about some of his personal exploits, including some of his upcoming adventures. Alex Jenner is a senior sales team manager at Computer Futures, a Tokyo-based firm and one of the key brands of the FTSE-listed S3 group. His primary responsibilities are professional recruiting for a range of technology clients and managing the online technology recruitment division for Japan. His company, S3, is one of the world's most dynamic and highly regarded IT recruitment consultancies and has developed this reputation over 30 years. In fact, according to the firm, every 38 minutes, a technology specialist is placed through Computer Futures. I just love that stat. I think it's amazing. Now, prior to taking up the challenge with the S3 group, Alex was a commodity futures proprietary trader and quantitative analyst with a privately held brokerage and asset management firm in Osaka, Japan. Born in the UK, Alex has been in Japan since 2003 and attended university both in the UK and at Kyoto University in Japan, earning degrees in physics and astrophysics. Aside from the professional accomplishments, Alex is a travel and outdoors adventurist. And I'm not using that word lightly, as you'll soon discover. Presently, he's engaged with Project 3000, a challenge which involves scaling all 21 of the 3,000-meter elevation mountains in Japan. He also has upcoming plans to summit both Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro, 5,895 meters for those who want to know, and Argentina's Mount Aconcagua. I slaughter that pronunciation every time. Coming in at 6,961 meters. And not to be overlooked, Alex is a certified dive master with an extensive list of exotic underwater global locales he has explored. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Christopher.
Well, I would like to jump right into it right now. And our first segment is something called Coloring Wikipedia. And basically, this is a segment where we try to add some spice to otherwise bland explanations of jobs. So what I have for you here is recruitment, obviously, and this is what Wikipedia is spitting out. Recruitment refers to the overall process of identifying, attracting, screening, shortlisting, and interviewing candidates for jobs, either permanent or temporary within an organization. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been in recruitment for 9 years, and when I heard about recruitment companies and recruiters, I honestly wondered why they existed in the first place. I was like, why can't companies just post ads and get people? And it was strange for me to understand that there are actually a large number of the economy, a few percent of the economy is made up of recruiters, which was a strange sort of statistic for me at first. And so I think that a lot of people don't really know what a recruiter does. And I didn't have any idea as well until I got into this. So, that definition as far as it goes, of course, is correct. But there's a lot more to recruitment than just that. And I guess if you wanted me to sum it up, I'd say recruitment's a pretty complicated job. So a recruiter needs to combine marketing, sales, procurement, human resources, law, finance, communication, writing, sourcing, and science skills, and then somehow add some magic to the mix. So there's a range of things that you have to do. It's surprising, actually.
Would you be able to kind of, within the context of this sort of conversation we're having, like what would a typical day entail for you? Obviously, they're going to be a little bit different each and every day, but the basic components of, a work day.
Yeah, absolutely. So I manage a team of 10 people, so I'm responsible for a reasonably large size team, and they're all hands on. So my tasks now are a little different than when I was 100% just recruiting, but it's extremely varied. So it can be, of course, talking to clients, talking to candidates, whether that's on the phone or meeting them, can be understanding, what the client needs. It can be talking to multiple candidates. It can be making cold calls. It can be dealing with, a couple hundred emails a day. It can be strategically planning out your finances as a sales manager, how are we going to make money? Because it's a sales job at the end of the day. And it's very, very, very varied. And it can be, managing people, coaching people, teaching people. I could go on and on and on. There's a lot of things to do in recruitment, and how you juggle those is the key to whether you're successful or not.
Excellent. No, I think that paints a really clear picture for those who wouldn't otherwise know what that job really does entail. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to jump into another segment here, a Q&A discovery. I'm going to fire off a few questions for you. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So the first one here, and I might be going out on a limb, but I'm guessing that you may be in the minority as far as the professional recruiter pool goes by holding degrees in physics and astrophysics. Now, what attracted you to this position or to this profession initially? And quite frankly, like what keeps your interest in it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm quite unusual in recruitment. Most people don't have a science background, and especially I was very mathematical with astrophysics is a bit unusual. So, in Japan, for those who don't know, Japan is an unusual country. It's a developed country, but it's still quite cut off from the rest of the world, primarily because of its language. There's very few foreigners in Japan. So if you are a foreigner here, even if you do speak pretty good Japanese, actually, there aren't that many jobs that you can do unless you really embed yourself 100% in Japanese culture. So if you want to be successful and you haven't been sent here as an expat on a package from overseas, there aren't that many options if you want to have a good salary. Recruitment is one of them. So I was wanting to stay in Japan. That was at the time the primary sort of factor for me. I was a quant trader before this, so that is also well paid and very interesting, but I wanted to do something a little different. And so honestly, there weren't a huge number of options, but also I had never had a sales job in my life, and it's a pretty important skill, sales in general. So I thought, well, okay, I'd like to give it a go and just do something completely different. So I took a leap in the dark, honestly, and I think my salary went down 400% in year one, because it's a very much a job where you're paid by your success. If you're good, you can get paid well, but if you're not, you don't make that much money. So it was honestly quite tough at the beginning, but I was attracted to the challenge. And what's kept me in it is that I honestly, when I came into this, I'd been doing lots of different things. I was an astrophysicist. I was almost a little bit arrogant, I'm ashamed to say. How hard can recruitment be? Actually, it was really difficult, and I found it tough. And even to this day, it keeps me on my toes all the time. So I never feel like I've mastered the job, and that keeps me engaged.
As you're explaining, just the different responsibilities. I think even for myself, who had a cup of coffee within that industry, I've worked within it for a very short amount of time, so I have some familiarity with it. But I wasn't in it long enough to get to the depths of where you are right now and to understand all of these other hats that you're wearing on a day-to-day basis. So I could see how that could be one challenging, but then also fulfilling on another side once you start succeeding.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've got another question here for you. What would you characterize as being the biggest challenges to succeeding in recruitment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people wonder, surely recruiting is easy. You talk to some candidates and, they say yes to your jobs and then you send them out. But it's actually, you need a huge sales pipeline. And even with the best will in the world, it's quite difficult to find the right people. I think the biggest challenge is there's an overwhelming number of tasks to achieve. In fact, literally infinite. And so it's very, very easy to be busy all day and achieve nothing. And that can be very frustrating if you're not focusing on the right tasks. So really stepping back every day and just sort of keeping a view on the strategic picture. Okay, what am I actually trying to achieve here? And reviewing your goals every day before you start is really important, I think. Number one, and just having the right balance of science and human skills. So it is fundamentally a human job, but you can bring science into it. And understanding the balance is needed, I think, is key. And a lot of people get that wrong, or it takes some time to adjust, let's say.
So those are kind of ways that you personally as well, kind of circumvented some of those obstacles and drawing upon science, I guess, and maybe understanding human relationships. And there's a wealth of knowledge out there in terms of that now, obviously with statistics, advanced data and such, that you can really get a good idea of, how people will respond in situation A, B, or C, and putting yourself in an advantageous position to allow for certain scenarios to play themselves out.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I could see that maybe that connection there, maybe with your scientific background and interests be playing a role in some of the success that you've experienced thus far. Well, that's interesting. And I guess I think that would also be something that maybe could surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential revolution to go in the recruitment industry in terms of using big data, as you just mentioned. I've tried to do that as much as I can with my science background. I think there's a lot more that could happen in just making the whole thing more efficient.
That's a whole other industry that's developing at breakneck speed at the moment. So yeah, leveraging that as it develops is only going to add opportunities to succeed. All right. Well, I've got one more question here for you. I spoke already about some of your extreme adventure interests, and I'm curious a little bit about whether those activities are a byproduct of your work, meaning a sort of like an outlet to help you decompress and de-stress. Or would you say those activities closely resemble your work, that being a series of well-planned and calculated risks?
It's interesting. Which came first, the chicken or the egg, I guess?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, certainly I do a lot of outdoor activities. For example, the last 6 months, I've been away every single weekend doing some kind of adventure. And I think I was always kind of like that. And maybe that's what attracted me to recruitment. It's fast paced. And I guess, yeah, do I use that to de-stress? Absolutely. At the weekend, I completely relax. And so I guess both, actually.
Okay, that was interesting. All right, well, we're going to jump into another segment here. And this is a water cooler story segment. And I just here invite our guests to indulge listeners with a story relating to the profession. So take it away.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I've been a recruiter for 9 years, and I've experienced many unusual and funny and interesting situations. There's a lot of candidates that we talk to, a lot of clients. You'd be amazed at what happens, and engage your listeners a little bit. You'd be amazed how many clients reject amazing candidates. And as a recruiter, I can see it. This person is perfect for their company, and they really they turn them down. They say, give us 10 reasons why they won't hire them. And if we've got a really good relationship with that client, we can sometimes push them and say, look, you have to interview them. Sorry, trust us. And if they really, if we've got a history, they will be like, all right, well, it's not the right person, but we'll interview him. And you'd be amazed how often they turn out to be the best people they've ever hired. And so it just goes to show the industry is still really random.
Yeah, fickle.
Yeah, it's fickle. We try and science hiring, but it's difficult to do because we're all human.
Biases that are been there for people, for companies perhaps as well, that can kind of get in the way sometimes of the purity of whether or not somebody is going to be great or not so great for a position.
Yeah, and to borrow a line from Steve Jobs, I mean, he used to talk about how Apple was embodiment of arts and science, and in a way recruitment is a little bit like that as well. We're not building iPhones, but we're selling talent essentially. But I think some of my favorite moments in recruitment have been helping people multiple times through their career. So there's a number of individuals who I cold call headhunted because they were perfect for a job. They weren't looking for a job, but they got interested in what I had to give them. And then they progressed on through their career and they became CEOs or C-suite people. And then having them come back and meet them, I keep in touch with them throughout their career and say, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I would have never become a CEO, or you took me in a completely different direction. That makes the job really worthwhile. So
yeah, most definitely. Like, how can that not be fulfilling in some capacity? I think that at the end of the day, I don't know how many professions you're able to close out your day, week, month, years, or even look back on your career and be like, well, I affected this person's life in such a positive way that essentially changed their whole trajectory, professionally and personally. Well, we are going to head into the last segment here, crystal ball segment. And it is as it sounds. I'm going to kind of project to the future here. But I do have a thought to lead off with. The elephant in the room, COVID-19, and it forced so many industries and workers to, flip their normal processes of doing business, completely upside down. You know this. And I'm guessing that recruitment was probably not spared. Now, also, I had mentioned earlier, I'd spent a very short amount of time within that industry. So I do understand that, traditional recruitment relies heavily on these in-person meetings between clients, recruiters, and candidates. So I'd be curious to hear about, how things changed during that time. COVID was raging and work at home programs were being instilled across companies, across industries around the world. What did you experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's quite interesting for us as well to see how COVID has changed many industries. So before COVID, many agency recruitment firms were classic sales companies, which meant that their consultants were physically on the sales floor, and we were strongly encouraged to meet clients and candidates face to face. Although it was gradually changing to a little bit of an online model, it still was mainly, offline to offline. It's totally different today. of course, we had to lock down for a year or more. So it's all remote. If I'd said to our CEO a month before COVID that, hey, how about we perform an experiment where we all work from home for a year, and I promise you our output won't change. I would have been laughed out of the room and they'd worry about me. But we had to do it. And you know what? We survived very well. Very quickly, everybody switched to Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And yeah, it's not quite the same as meeting people face to face, but you can do more meetings. So it actually balances out. And because everybody's doing it, it's normal. So we did very well in COVID. Our company's STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which were pretty resilient industries, and so we did well in 2020 and 2021 actually very well, despite the potential difficulties with the economy. So it's been good. It's been good in short, and it's changed.
Yeah, I'm curious here. Like again, the focus is within technology, as you mentioned, right? Do you think it would be like these trends would be similar? Say, for example, if you were a professional recruiter and your field was say within marketing and advertising or pharmaceutical or something else.
Yeah, I mean, maybe slightly, but I think all of the recruiters that I know in all the industries here in Tokyo and Japan, quarantine like the rest of us. So they had to change. I think it was easier for us to adjust because technology people are more adept with technology. But everybody went through a period and everybody changed. So I think it will stay for the most part. But one thing that was very difficult, and I'm sure a lot of companies around the world are facing this, onboarding new people remotely is very difficult. And a lot of skills that you need as a recruiter are learned through observing other people. So I don't see us 100% working from home forever, but I do think we'll have a hybrid model, perhaps 2 days in the office, 3 days in the office a week, that kind of thing, forever. And COVID will have changed the global economy, I think, forever, which is really interesting.
It is. It's incredibly interesting. Do you think for yourself, this will be my last question in regards to this, how has that been for you personally? Have you enjoyed that transition or? Yeah,
actually, I'm quite forward thinking. I've always thought that it was a bit old school. As a team manager, especially, you can imagine when I'm on the sales floor, people are asking me questions all the time, which is great. That's one of my jobs, is to help people. But it's actually very difficult to focus on your own tasks. So having now 2 days a week where I'm at home and I can manage my own time and focus is actually changed. It's improved how I work. As a manager, I think for me personally, 3 days in, 2 days out is the best way. But it's different for different people. But yeah, so actually it's been for the better, and I hope it continues. And I was actually pleasantly surprised how my company and other companies in recruitment were quite open to change. I thought they'd be very resistant to it, but actually we've had a policy now where moving forward, even after COVID, if that ever happens, we will have work from home, flexible working forever. And I don't mean like 1 day a week, you can choose within reason.
Yeah, it's one of the byproducts of this mess of COVID that has come about, and both of us being based in Japan and understanding too that Japan, as you'd mentioned earlier in this conversation, that it's a country that is unique, being an island country itself. And because of that, being very, very slow to change in all respects. But with this, COVID changed the game essentially and made things equal for everyone. And it forced companies more or less to shift. It's probably brought about a lot of change in a country like Japan as well, on top of everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Japan is exactly a whole different topic, but I think even if there's always built up, pent up demand to change in Japan, but unless everybody changes at the same time, there's a lot of social pressure not to. So COVID was a great excuse to suddenly jump forward and modernize.
Well, some great insights, Alex. I really appreciate that. And we're drawing to a close here. So I do want to extend a hearty thanks to you for joining the show. It's been, again, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Christopher. We could talk for hours, but I think that was a good introduction to recruitment. So feel free to contact me if you have any more questions.
All right. Well, for those interested in learning more about Alex and his company, you can find and connect with him through s3.com or on LinkedIn. And if you missed it, this information will be included in the show notes. Also, if you like today's show, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And don't forget to join us for the next episode of Life as a, where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm Christopher Schoenwald, your host, and until next time, stay curious about life and living.